If you're like a lot of parents that we see in our office, you've probably tried everything for your child, from behavior modification to occupational therapy. Maybe you've done diet changes, maybe you've done calming techniques, and yet your child's struggles continue. We see a lot of families who are exhausted because their child is having constant tantrums, maybe sensory meltdowns, behavior challenges, and a lot of times they seem like they come out of nowhere. You don't know when they're going to come next. Maybe your child struggles with wearing certain clothes. Maybe they have extreme reactions to an everyday sound, or they have anxiety in a simple activity like going out to eat as a family. If this is the case, not only is it exhausting, but it's frustrating because you don't know where to turn next. In the US, 1 in 6 kids actually deals with a developmental disability, and 40% now struggle with at least one chronic illness. Now, here's the thing, a lot of doctors are actually not looking for the root cause, whether it's behavior challenges, sensory issues, health problems. A lot of times, what we see in our office is they are not separate issues, but they actually come from one common thing. So that is what this video is about. If your child is dealing with behaviors, sensory, big moods, big emotions, maybe anxiety, if you want to actually understand what is happening in their body and their nervous system, that's what I want to share with you here. So go back a number of years, probably 10 years ago, little Mateo came into our office at 3 years old. And mom said up until 1, he was doing perfectly fine until he fell and had a big hit on his chin. He needed stitches, and she said it was almost an instant change. Suddenly, he had big emotions, big meltdowns. He became defiant, stubborn. He was angry. He was moody. It was so tough for the little guy because mom said it was just such a drastic shift. Fast forward a few months into chiropractic care, and with our gentle neurological approach, we were able to take his nervous system out of that fight, flight, stress mode, and everything started to change. His moods were better, his sleep was better, he was better with now his sister that was in his life, his younger sister, and his emotional regulation. He was still 3-year-old, but it was way improved. And here's the deal. In this case, dad was an MD, so they had tried a lot to try to help him out. But what they weren't looking at was the underlying stress that had taken place on his nervous system. And that's really what we specialize in our office. So I want to show you, before we dive into more of what's going on, here's the deal. In the US, children that are 2 to 17-year-olds, there's 9.4% have an ADHD diagnosis. You can see here 7.4% have a behavior problem diagnosed, 7.1% anxiety, and up to 16% with a sensory issue. So that's when it comes to sort of this chronic health that we're dealing with in our kids. I want you to know there's a lot of other families dealing with the same thing. And oftentimes you go to the pediatrician, you go to the doctor, and maybe they say, oh, try this med, or all right, do a breathing technique, or you get referred for OT, or you get referred for a neuropsych eval. And oftentimes we see parents who come to see us who say, yeah, those things work temporarily, but it didn't feel like they were getting to the root of things, because if we stopped doing them, my child's behaviors just returned. So what we're looking for in our office then is what we see as the nervous system, and what we see commonly is nervous system dysregulation. So it's where the nervous system gets stuck in fight or flight mode. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So there is what we commonly see in our office is called the perfect storm. And what this is a series of stresses early in life. 1, we see prenatal stress. 2, we see birth trauma. So this might be C-section, induction, stalled labor, maybe being stuck in the birth canal, and some sort of stress during labor and delivery. And lastly, we see commonly some sort of early intervention. Maybe it's a lot of antibiotics because your kid was getting sick all the time. Maybe it is just a colicky baby, a refluxy baby who needed meds because they didn't digest well. Ultimately, this early intervention is something that is needed because a kiddo's nervous system was stuck in stress early. So what we're looking for is if the nervous system is in fight flight, just like I mentioned with Mateo early on, is it's going to show you with different symptoms of stress. So maybe after your baby was born, they were colicky or they didn't nurse well. Maybe they had a lot of reflux, they didn't sleep well, they were constipated. Maybe they didn't have smooth muscles. So when you hold them, they always felt tight and rigid and not able to move freely like a baby should. When it gets to toddlers, then what we see is if that stress is stuck on, it might start to affect the immune system. It might affect the ability to detox. And so they're getting sick more frequent than you want them to. They're getting skin issues like eczema or different rashes popping up. All those are signs that something is stressing their body out. And one of the things that we see is a lot of times if a parent's coming to see us for a behavior issue or a sensory issue, anxiety, tantrums, meltdowns, that category, one of the things they've looked into by now is the brain gut connection, because they say, well, I've heard the gut can stress the brain out. And yes, that is absolutely true. There's studies that show if there's not the right probiotic, the gut flora, the good healthy bacteria in the gut, that it can actually release inflammation that does stress the brain out. However, what we see as a missing piece is maybe you've tried diet changes, maybe you've tried prune juice and pear juice and Miralax, and your kid's still not pooping well, or you've gone gluten-free and casein-free and a lot of restrictions, and you've eliminated dyes and maybe some of the things that you could see triggering your kid, but they're still having big emotions. If that's the case, what we commonly see is something going on with what is called their vagus nerve. You see, this is a nerve that goes down from the brainstem down to the body, and it goes to the stomach. It goes to the small intestine, the large intestine. It goes to the pancreas, the liver. It is key for digestion because when it goes to those areas, it helps actually create peristalsis, which is the contraction of the muscles. It helps release digestive enzymes and it helps get digestion going. What we see, especially as I mentioned with the birth trauma, is that can affect the upper neck of a baby and it can really dampen and shut down and impact the vagus nerve. Now you might see digestion getting stuck. So that's an example where maybe you've tried all the things to help improve digestion, but you're like, it's still not working. Is oftentimes we see in our office because the vagus nerve is off. So when the vagus nerve is off, the other big thing that it does is it starts to prevent your child from coming out of the fight-flight response. I was about to say trigger the fight-flight response, but ultimately that's the major brake pedal. So in Mateo's case, when he had that big injury to his head, when he fell and needed stitches, we did neurological scans and we saw a lot of stress on this part of his nervous system, which was preventing his vagus nerve from working properly, which is the major brake pedal that when we are feeling stressed, maybe you don't like what your sister did, and instead of calming back down, you explode into a meltdown, or you don't want to put your iPad down and come and eat, and you have a full-blown behavior tantrum in the middle of the floor. That's because the vagus nerve oftentimes isn't able to bring stress level back down. They've also done a lot of studies where kids with sensory issues tend to have what's called low vagal tone. The vagus nerve isn't working the way it's supposed to. So to bring all this together then, if your child is dealing with big emotions, big behaviors, and you've tried behavioral modifications, if you've tried different parenting techniques, different diets and calming strategies, but you feel like you're still walking on eggshells, or you have to do everything absolutely perfect to get them through the day or get them out the door in the morning or get them through the grocery store. If that's the case, I would encourage you to look inside their body, look to see how their nervous system is doing. And that's exactly what we do, of course, in our office. We use a very safe, very gentle neurological insight scans to be able to measure how their nervous system is working. And if we find stress stuck on inside the body, like we did with Mateo, we use very gentle neurological adjustments to help reset their nervous system, get it out of fight-flight mode, back into calm, grounded, rest, digest, healing mode. So if that interests you, check out our website where we have a lot of information on how we help the nervous system. And please know we're here to support your family.